This video will show you how to replace the driver's side front CV axle assembly on a Chevy Malibu. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we do is safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground and we'll have the suspension hanging. Now once you've done that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, let's pay attention directly in the center of where our brake rotor is and we'll remove our axle nut. To remove the axle nut, we'll be using a 32mm socket. Let's go ahead and turn this counterclockwise. A quick note about removing the axle nut. If you find when you're attempting to loosen or tighten the axle nut, it wants to spin on you, you can either have a second person holding on the brake pedal or you could carefully use a pry bar directly down towards the ground in between your studs, being careful not to cause any damage, preventing this from turning. We'll use some penetrant in this area. Continue on with a hammer and punch. As far as the punch is concerned, you're going directly in the center of the axle. We're going to start tapping on this to break the axle free from our wheel bearing hub. We do not want to use the hammer on the axle, which could potentially cause damage. Now that I do have movement from here, let's continue on. Now as we move along the forward side of our front strut, we can see where our brake flex hose is and our ABS wire. We like to make sure we have plenty of slack from this area so we do not cause any damage. As far as dislodging the ABS wire, it has a small plastic bracket here and over here. Go ahead and use a small pick or flathead screwdriver to carefully dislodge this area. Of course, a thorough inspection as we continue on, we need to make sure we do not cause any damage. We'll dislodge our brake flex hose from the front strut. 10mm bolt. There's our mounting bolt. Take hold of that flex hose. Go ahead and set that aside. We're paying attention along where our front strut connects to our front knuckle next. In this area, you're going to find that you have 2 mounting bolts and 2 mounting nuts. We're using an 18mm for each side. I'm holding the bolt head with my wrench, and we'll remove the nut on the other side. Now at this point, I have this broken free. I'm going to leave it in this position. Let's continue on to the next. A quick note about these bolts, you will find that they are splined. They will not spin. You'll have to tap them out of place. Let's just continue tapping these out. That one's loose. Of course, a thorough inspection of each one of the mounting bolts. If it looks like they're damaged or rotted, you need to replace them. Now, I do like to have extra slack from my ABS wire. For that, I'm just going to go ahead and carefully make my way along where the steering knuckle is, and we'll just pull this out of place. Now, as we start pulling this down and away, we're being aware of our ABS wire and our flex hose. If you carefully bring these down and under the front strut, we should be able to carefully start pulling this towards the rear. We'll come out at an angle so we can start removing the axle from our wheel bearing. Start pulling this out of here. Now that I have this removed from here, we're going to follow the axle all the way inboard towards the transmission. I have to carefully pop this out and away from the transmission. A note about this is we want to be aware of possible transmission fluid in the area, so we have a collection receptacle under there. Aside from that, we also want to be aware of the fact that the axle can be heavy and we don't want it to fall out and potentially hurt you. To remove the axle from our transmission, You can carefully do this using a small pry bar. We would want to come in between the axle and the transmission and gently pry away, being extremely careful not to cause any damage to our transmission. Once again, we're making sure the axle does not fall down and potentially hurt us here. Slide that right out of there. There it is, friend. The next thing that we want to do is clean and inspect our axle seal. For this, I'm only using a clean rag, no detergents. I don't want anything making its way inside of my transmission. Just a quick wipe here. We're confirming that the seal is not torn, worn, or damaged. This looks good. Now we can install our brand new front CV axle. We'll carefully get this in position. When we start sliding it towards the transmission, you're going to find that you'll have to carefully press it in. You want to listen for an audible click and double check to make sure it's secure. This would be the inboard side of the axle. Let's go ahead and carefully slide this in. We're being careful for our axle seal. Now, as I press this in, it feels like it's in, but as I pull, it slides right out. Go ahead and carefully line this up. If you need to, you could carefully tap on the far end using a rubber mallet. Be careful not to damage your threads. Otherwise, you typically can just go ahead and press this in. There we are, audible click. I'm reaching all the way in. I'm not grabbing onto the boot, but I'm taking hold of the axle and I'm going to attempt to pull it out. That does not slide out of place. That's exactly what we're looking for. Let's make sure we clean any mess along the transmission and we'll continue on along the outboard side. Prior to installing the outboard side of our CV shaft into the wheel bearing, we'll use some anti-seize along the splined area, not necessarily on the threaded portion where our axle nut would be. Let's go ahead and line this up along the backside. We'll slide it straight on through and we can bring the knuckle back up into place. Once again, being extremely aware of our brake flex hose and ABS wire. Let's get this in place. We're just going to carefully pull this around the backside. I'm lining it up. At this point, I'm going to take hold of the knuckle. We're carefully bringing it up. As you can see, I do have my brake flex hose and ABS wire underneath the front strut, so I have to bring it over into the proper position. You don't want to have it on the wrong side. Now, as I start bringing this up, we need to make sure the outer portion of the axle makes its way out through the wheel bearing. ABS wire, pay attention to that. Now I have my mounting bolts. They're clean, and I applied some red thread locker. As you remember, these bolts come through from the front towards the rear, so let's go ahead and line this up. We're sliding them in. Next mounting bolt. A couple light taps should help drive these through, and we'll continue on along the backside with our mounting nuts. They're both started on. Let's go ahead and snug them up. The torque for these will be 166 foot-pounds. Let's secure our brake flex hose next. 10mm bolt here. Start it in, snug it up. Secure your ABS wire. Time for the ABS wire along the flex hose. Line it up, press it in. If any of these clips are broken, you can use a wire tie. The main concern is this cannot be hanging in a way that it could get damaged. Now it's time to reinstall our axle nut. A note about this is when you install it, you can only use a hand tool. Do not use an impact tool, which could cause damage to your bearing. To help prevent this from turning while we continue on, I'm down close to the ground. I'm using a pry bar carefully diagonally across my lug studs, being aware not to cause any damage. This will prevent this from turning. Install your axle nut. When we go to install this, we're going to bottom it out. We'll torque it to 111 foot-pounds. After that, we're going to loosen it a quarter turn and then retorque it to 185 foot-pounds. $185. Now one last quick inspection and we can reinstall our wheel. We're going to get the wheel in place. Once we have it up there, go ahead and start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We're going to bottom them out in a crisscross manner. We'll get the wheel back on the ground and we can torque each lug nut to 100 foot-pounds. Now I have the wheel safely on the ground. We're going to torque these to that 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you want to do is make sure you pump up your brake pedal. We're going to want to make sure that you check your transmission fluid per the manufacturer's specifications. Top it off as necessary. After that, you're going to take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.